All right, welcome everybody. Today we'll be doing our post-production workshop with Stephanie Hubert, and we'll kind of be going a little bit to the process of coming from Carleton University and now onto what she's been working on so far. So yeah, I'll be turning it over to Steph. If you have any questions, you can put in the chat, raise your hands, and this recording will be available later on too, so you can leave your comments under the video for later on. But yeah, we'll put it up to Steph now.
Okay, sounds good. Well, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us, whether it's right now live or if it's in the recording, but I'm going to be talking a little bit about what's up after graduating, like what's going to happen, what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing. And I decided to go into the world of post-production. So I'm going to talk about how post-production works in the real world. So yeah, we'll go into it. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about all these things. So a little bit about me and the projects I worked on before graduating and after graduating. I also started being a critique. So I'm also critiquing on Instagram. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. Like I said, I'm going to talk about what's next after graduation and what you should be planning towards, whether you're going towards filmmaking or not. Like I think that's really important to think about right when you're in your studies. I'm going to talk about post-production, how it works, what are the steps to it, and what are my roles as an assistant editor doing that. And I don't know if any of you are pretty familiar with editing, but I'm going to talk about like just basics of editing for anyone that needs a little bit more background on it. If you don't know much more about it, I mean, I think it's always good to know. And then I'll talk about a little bit of tips for starting your career. So yeah, that's a lot of stuff. On the picture on the left side, you'll see that my name is on there as an assistant monteur because I work in the French-Canadian industry. And so that was my first credit that I got on Netflix. So I find that's always fun to share. It was around Christmas last year. That's why we see Christmas cards next to my TV. But it's always fun to share. Like when you first get that credit on TV, it's always super cool. So it does happen. And I mean, I graduated in May 2022. So those kinds of things can happen pretty quickly. So that's motivating. So yeah, a little bit about me. So I currently live in Montreal. And as you can see by my accent, I have a little bit of a French accent because I'm French Canadian and I currently work in the French Canadian television industry. I work on a really cool TV show called Indéfendable. It's a daily TV show, so there's an episode that plays every day. It's not like a soap opera, it's more like a daily show with kind of like Grey's Anatomy, but if it would play 4 times a week. Kind of that style of show, but for lawyers. And it's been really great to work on that. It's 120 episodes per season, so it is a very, very busy job, but I really, really enjoy it. So yeah, like I said, I graduated with a double major in film studies and communications in May 2022, so pretty recently. I also have a degree in CEGEP in arts, literature, and communications. And I'm also a critique that I on Instagram called La Dame Critique. I do talk about TV shows, films, books, and it's a fun time. And literally, you guys know, I was also a member of the Carleton Film Society a few years back. So that was fun to be a part of. And I've been using those skills in what I'm doing today. So that's great. Okay, so work experience before I graduated. So first job that I had, that was like an internship. I worked for a radio station called 94.7 Hits FM. It no longer exists, unfortunately, but when I did work there, I got to do a few videos for fundraising events. And that was like the first time that I was using a camera outside of school work. So that was a really good time. And doing those kinds of opportunities, even though it was like an unpaid internship, is super important. You got to start somewhere and you got to learn how a camera works if ever you want to work into this industry. So I had literally this camera, a Canon DSLR, and I was taking pictures and videos and doing whatever I could at the time. And probably wasn't my best work ever, but you got to start somewhere and learn how to take videos and how exposure works, how all of those things work. Learn cameras and lighting and all that stuff. That's super important. Then I worked with Miss Quebec a little bit because I did participate into that pageant, and they offered me a few working opportunities in the future to make some promotional videos for them, and that helped me, practice with editing. I didn't film so much, but I did much more editing for them. So that was a really great opportunity. And then I did an internship with Picture Disc Productions, which was the first bigger production company that I worked for. So this is a documentary style production company that's based in Montreal. And I worked with them during the pandemic, and it was really great to see how documentary work, the process of pre-production and all the way to editing. There's so many steps, and that's where I got to learn a lot about that. And I'll talk a little bit later about what are all the steps of getting a TV show or a movie done. So I learned a lot with them about that. And that was also an unpaid internship where I was working 1 day a week for them, but I was mainly doing some social media stuff and basically following them around whenever they were doing some shoots and things like that. And then for Color Me Social, that is an internship also unpaid that I did during the summer of 2020, so right in the pandemic. And it was a company that was based in England. So I contacted them, and they were needing someone to do the rebranding. So I actually made this logo for them. That's on there. I made their promotional video, and it was the first time that I was using After Effects, the program, to do some effects work. So that was a really exciting job to do, and they were very, very proud with the promotional video that I was able to make for them. And yeah, and then of course there's Learn. So Beatrice and we have worked with Learn throughout the past few years, and if you guys don't know what it's about, it's the Local Engagement Refugee Research Network, and it is about making we were doing what we're doing is we're doing videos with refugees and with the organization that is doing research on refugees and with refugees to be able to, spread the word on everything that they're doing, the research that they're doing. And yeah, it was a really great job. I did that for 3 years, and it was a really great opportunity to get to learn more about filming, how to ask questions, especially with sensitive topics, and how to edit those, which are super, super, super important to learn. And then after graduating, so I started applying after graduation around March, and I got an interview with Just for Laughs like 2 weeks later. It was fairly quick, and they wanted me to start even before I finished graduating. So I remember it was like April 11th, and we were finishing classes, we were finishing exams around the end of April. So I was working with them and doing my exams, which was kind of chaotic, not gonna lie, especially that Just for Laughs is based in Montreal. So I was traveling around Ottawa and Montreal doing that. But it was my first job as an assistant editor, basically. So I had to learn a lot of things really quickly. I'll talk a little bit more about what it consists of being an assistant editor a little bit later on, but it was a lot of just understanding how things work and really quickly. And then my contract ended with them in December of 2022. So since then, I've been working with Pixcom, which is one of the largest French-Canadian production companies. And it's been really great to work there. Some of the bigger names in the industry are my bosses, basically. And so it's been really great. And I've learned a lot with them too, with different programs and working in fiction, basically, which is a whole other thing. While I was in university during the pandemic, I did a personal project. I'm talking a little bit about it just because I think it's really important for everyone to, whether it is a personal project or doing anything outside of your current schoolwork, to do a project, whether it's something small, something big, whatever it is that is outside of your comfort zone and outside of your schoolwork. I did this series over the pandemic that was a 50-episode series on representing different people that are facing different adversities in their life. So my point was to have a lot of diversity and share stories. This documentary series is fairly simple. It was just doing like interviews over Zoom and just putting some pictures over what they were talking about. But it was a lot of practice for me to just learn how to ask questions with people, learn how to edit those interviews, even though it's just through like a Zoom call like we're doing right now, and making that look interesting, and to add some pictures and just communicate, and learning how to, make a 10-minute product out of probably like an hour time of interview. So that was really, really great. And notably, some of the guests that I had was Sam Humphrey. So if you don't know him, he's an actor and he is a small person. So he has a disability that he's grown and to like be like 4 foot, I think. And he's a pretty big actor in the American industry. And so I got to talk with him through some mutual friends. I talked with Kim Jengra, which is and was a professional dancer in the United States, and she's from Montreal. And so she was talking about her experience with sexual assault and how she has become an advocate of that throughout all this time. I talked with nonprofit owners, some hosts, so many different people. The list is endless. I mean, there's 50 episodes out there. So if ever you want to check it out, it is still available. There's some episodes in English and in French. And yeah, I'm just showing that not necessarily to promote myself or whatever. It's just more to like say that I think it's really, really important that you experiment with programs and that you experiment with doing your own projects. And so afterwards, right now, I'm currently doing my own other personal project, which is La Dame Critique, which is basically just being a critique on Instagram. So I post some of my reviews on some latest books, TV shows, and movies that I've been enjoying. And it's been really great. I've been getting opportunities to attend premieres in Montreal and write reviews on other people's works, like books. And it's been a really great opportunity just to share my thoughts. Basically, my degree at Carleton has been about learning what it is to critique a film, what it is to write an essay about movies, about TV shows, and to think critically about that. And I really didn't want to lose that skill. It's a super important skill. So I decided to start this blog in a sense and to write what my thoughts are on everything. And if ever that's something that interests you, I for sure recommend doing it. I mean, obviously can be a little bit overwhelming at first because it's embarrassing sometimes to share your opinion, but I think it's really important and it makes you more confident in yourself in the end. Okay, so I don't know how many people are here, but I had a little bit of some questions for people that you can just answer in chat, or we can do like a raising your hand kind of thing, where I just wanted to get to know you guys a little bit more since I've been blabbing about myself for all this time. And so you guys can just like write the answers to these in the chat, or you can just like raise your hand and speak in the microphone. But I was curious to know, what are some of your favorite movies, or what is your big favorite movie? I want to know also, what is it about the film industry or films in general that interest you? And if any of you are interested in working in the film or TV industry, I'd be curious to know. So did any of you want to go, or I don't think I can see the
I can
chat.
go. I
Yeah, go
guess
ahead.
it's hard to just pick one favorite movie. I think that's always one of the hardest questions ever to answer. But I'm a big horror movie guy, so
Mhm.
I think one of my favorite movies is probably The Thing.
Ooh,
I like body horror particularly is something that I've always really liked, which is like a kind of a subgenre of horror, and The Thing definitely has a lot of that in it. I like Lovecraftian stuff, so like that also kind of shows up in that film. And it's just a well done film, a lot of cool practical effects, which is also something I like. So like it has a lot of things I like about it. I don't know, like I'd be hesitant to say it's my favorite movie just because that is such a difficult question to answer, but that's the one I'll probably throw up. And then I guess I'm not actually that interested personally in working in the industry. I think film's very cool, but I used to kind of want to get into it, but I think over time I've kind of, after meeting a lot of people who have worked in the industry, I think there's a work-life balance thing about that industry that doesn't particularly appeal to me.
I
So,
get that. Yeah.
so for me, it's sort of like, is my passion in making films versus is my passion something I like to watch movies? It's sort of a balance. So me personally, I would say I'm most likely not going to enter the industry. And then what's about films that I really like is it's such like multimedia. There's so many like different artistic mediums kind of coming together in film that's like if you like sound and music, that integrates well into music, cinema or into film, cinematography, writing, all that stuff, acting. So it's like it's such a great mix and it's such a obviously such a great way for storytelling, and like that's why it's one of the most mainstream forms of storytelling. I think that's enough yapping from me. I'll let someone else go.
And I saw Simon's hand, so I don't know if you want to go first, and then I can jump in.
Sure. Sounds good. Um, my favorite movie, I don't know, I guess I like the movie Magnolia quite a bit. I watched it kind of recently. It's not my favorite, but it just comes to mind. Um, for what it is about film that interests me, I guess I agree with Will's answer. There's just so many different pieces and different mediums within the medium that just makes it really interesting. Then for whether I'd like to work in the industry, I think I probably would. Um, I think screenwriting sounds interesting, but I don't know. Theater maybe instead. I don't know. It's hard to know.
Yeah, there's so many avenues. So whether you're working in the film or theater, there's so many things that you can do with just storytelling in general.
And I guess for me, like I feel like I always go back to Dune. That's my favorite movie right now, but I feel like Letterboxd would say otherwise. I guess like I did get into post-production and editing is my main focus. So I guess like yeah, you're here to like kind of give me that view into the industry because I think, as Will said, like the work-life balance is something that's also like I'm worried about. So I'm not sure like I like to work in production, but then bounce it off with post-production. But I also heard that the hours are not very different, that it could also be long hours as you're editing. So I would be interested in it, but I think that's something I have to like consider with like, yeah, work-life balance, but maybe you can like get into that later on. So
Definitely. Yeah, I will. So that's a super important question, the thing about work-life balance. I'm happy that you brought both of you brought that up because that was something that I was really worried about when I was in your shoes. So yeah, I think I'll help you like be happy with my answer. I think you'll see there's so many different ways that you can do it. So we'll talk about that, that's for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you for your answers. Is there anyone else or is it just the three of you?
we could all
I can't see the chat, so
I can pull up any answers, but we can always put comments in the chat, or if you ever anybody wants to like put their hand up throughout the, I'll let you know and signal that to you.
awesome. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so there you go. So we'll move on to what's next after graduating. So this is exactly what we were talking about right now about the work-life balance. And these are the kinds of questions that I think you should be asking yourself at the moment, if ever you're thinking about working in this industry or in any storytelling industry. I think that, or even in general, where do you want to work? I think like that's super important questions to ask yourself before you're graduating. Like, what is the avenue that you want to take? So the main question here is, what environment do you see yourself working in? Is it more something that's in an office or is it something that's more on the field? If it's more on the field, it's a little bit more of a like you're going to have less structured working hours. Sometimes you might be working like mornings or some like really, really early mornings, or sometimes you're going to work more very, very late nights, or sometimes it's going to be more stable. It really depends on the project, but on the field, you're going to have a little bit less stability in a sense versus working in an office. It's really a 9 to 5 kind of thing, or it's going to be like a 6 to midnight kind of thing. It really depends what kind of shifts that you're going to take. But those are the things to think about. Is that, do you want something where you're going to be a little bit more at a desk or at multiple desks, or are you thinking more of something where you're going to be on the run all the time? It's also really important to think, do you want to work from home or do you want to work in person or something a little bit more hybrid? Is stability important for you? So this was a big one for me, stability as in like income. Do I want to have a stable income where I'm not going to be worried about having a contract in and have like a hole in my schedule for like 3 months? Or that was something that was really important to me. I personally don't want to be unemployed for like 3 months. So for me, I really wanted a schedule where I'm going to fully be booked and work 9 to 5 every day and not have that fear of not having a job. So that's something that you need to think about. If stability is something that you're not too worried about and you like to have that flexibility of, am I going like, if I might not be working for like 2 months so that you can work on your own projects and stuff like that, and then go back to working for a contract. And if you're comfortable with that, that's super great. But you have to think about those things before you think about like what career you want to go into. And another thing is like, do you want to be on the move? Do you always want to be like going to different locations or always going to the same one? How do you feel about long working days? Oftentimes when you're working on sets or if you're working in person, like, yeah, basically on sets, you're going to be working like 12, 14-hour days, sometimes 16. It's really, really long days. And sometimes it's one after the other. And so you have to be thinking about that. Like, sure, you might be having long days, like of maybe 3, 4 days a week, but then you're going to have more days off than like if you're working a 9 to 5 in a sense where you're going to work 5 days a week. If you're working like 14, 16 hours a day, you're probably just going to work 3 days a week. So that's something that you can think about. And like maybe some of you are going to say like, well, 5 days a week of being off, and no, it doesn't sound too bad. So it really depends what what you want to do. Also another thing is, do you want to work as a team, or are you the kind of person that likes to work on your own? If you're wanting to work as a team, I suggest working anything that's on a set is really, really good because you're always going to be surrounded by 40, 50 people and they're doing all their own thing, but at the same time, they need to collaborate together. Versus if you're working in editing, it's a little bit more of like a internal job, like where you're working on your own and you're doing your own thing. And yeah, you're getting comments and you're working with other people, but everyone's doing kind of like their own things separately. So you have a little bit more like creative freedom of doing your own small thing. What you're doing, your box, I guess, your box of what you're supposed to do. And how do you react to being criticized? A lot of people that don't make it in this industry is because they can't accept criticism. It's people that can't take no for an answer. It's people that whenever you tell them like, I don't like what you worked on, they can't take it. They're not happy and they're telling you you're wrong and those kinds of things. You need to be able to be coachable to be in this industry, no matter what you're in, but specifically if you want to be in editing. And in one episode, we get about like for the first version, like 60 to 100 comments in one episode of 21 minutes. That's a lot of comments, and you have to be able to like take it and be like, okay, they don't like this shot. It's not personal against me. It's just what can we do to fix the problem? It's a lot more about being coachable and being like, okay, they don't like that. That's fine. We'll get through it and go on to the next thing and not take it personally. And if you can take it personally sometimes, but that's going to be so much harder on you. But yeah, see how do you take criticism from your essays? If you take it really harshly and that you feel like your professors hate you, or do you take it the other way where you're just like, you know what, I'm gonna take the comments and do better next time. I think like the second option is a lot easier to get through especially if you're going in editing. But else if you're gonna work like on a set or something, it's a little bit easier to get past by those kinds of things. But editing, it's like you got to take the comments and apply what the clients want. You don't have a choice. And another good one is, are you good at networking? If you want to work on sets, you need to know people. If you want to be a producer, if you want to be a screenwriter, if you want to do any of those big, really fancy, cool jobs, you have to know how to talk to people. You have to know, like, you have to be a communicator. You need to know people. That is the secret. And it's easier than you think, in a sense. Once you start knowing one person, you're being kind to them, you talk with them, you keep that momentum going, it's really easy. People are going to like you. If you talk to them, people are going to like you. That's the simple thing. I'm going to go on a little bit more about some tips later on things to keep relationships and good things to make you grow in a company faster. Okay, next slide. So post-production, we're finally here. So the post-production is the 6th step in making a film or a TV show. So the first step is development. And development is basically when a producer comes up with an idea. So you're like, okay, we're gonna make a TV show about lawyers. That's the first concept. So that's when you start thinking about your concept and you're trying to get people that are gonna be on board with you. So that is for other producers or people with big money that are gonna wanna help you, getting a crew, getting some actors, and getting some big names in there. And so once you have that, and once you have a pre-made document on this, Then you're going to go into pre-production. So if everything is greenlit and everyone is happy with the product of, okay, we're basically the pitch in a sense of what is the idea, who are the actors that want to play in it, what is the planned schedule on it. That's when you're gonna bring it to like the big money people in a sense, like if ever you're working with like big production companies such as, I don't know, Searchlight or I don't know, Warner Brothers or whatever. So that's when you're going to bring it to a bigger production company like that. But oftentimes development is done in-house. So for example, like I was saying with the lawyer show that I'm working on, it is the idea of a producer that we have in-house that developed that. Her husband is a lawyer, so she developed that with her husband. They made the idea, they made the main characters, they thought of some actors that they were interested in using. They made this deck, they brought it to the bosses, and they said yes or no. Well, they obviously said yes. Pre-production, the pre-production stage is when things get a little bit more serious. So that's when the money starts getting involved. It's when we're thinking about locations. It's when we're renting a studio for doing, if you're doing fictional work. It's when scheduling starts happening and auditions and all those kinds of things. So everything that's going to be done before. This is also when the scripts are going to be finalized. They're going to be written. We're going to hire script writers to really get into the dialogue. Sometimes a script of a TV show only is done like when production is already starting. So that's really interesting. Like the script isn't always finalized until way later into the process. So that's also, so yeah, that's pretty much what's happening. And then production is when things are actually happening. So when I say things are actually happening, it's not exactly shooting. It's when we are setting up the furniture in the studio. It's when the coordinators are starting to schedule the editors. It's more like those kinds of production technicality things. And photography is much more when we're actually shooting. So it's when we are shooting from that time to that time, that is the shooting, the camera is rolling and all those kinds of things. But production is a little bit more of like the like rehearsing for your lines. It's when the actors get their script. It's kind of those things, preparing the costumes, kind of like the final details is production, versus photography is much more like the filming itself. So photography can happen at the same time as post-production is happening. Most TV shows work this way because or most even movies work this way because there's so much material that is being done at the same time that there needs to be post-production happening at the same time. So usually when something is being filmed from 8 in the morning till 5 p.m., then the whole material is going to be gathered into some memory cards, like you would have in any camera, and it's going to be delivered to the post-production company. And then that post-production company is going to put in those cards into a system. They're going to synchronize the sound and image, and they're going to prepare what we call dailies, which is basically having all the footage into one, or the rushes, whatever. There's both ways of calling it, and putting it into a system so that the producers and everyone that's working on the project can have a visual on the next day of what was filmed the previous day, so that they can know if they like the style of the photography that's being done, if they like the angles that they used, if they're planning on reshooting things, those kinds of things. So that's happening. The number 4, number 6 is happening like kind of simultaneously until there's the wrap. The wrap is actually when everything is done filming and they're closing up all the studios. They're putting all the furniture away, the props, everything is put away, and there's no more opportunity for filming. So that is usually when there's no more reshoots. You can't do anything. This is done. We're actually wrapping the 2nd season of our show this Friday, so we're really busy at the moment in post-production because we want to make sure that we have all the material that we'll need and that we're not going to need some reshoots after Friday. So we're hoping that everything will be good. And then once the wrap is done, we're still in the post-production mode. So that is where I'm going to continue talking more about post-production afterwards, but it's in the post-production mode for at least a few more months after the wrap has been done. And then the last step is when all the masters are done, when all the final editing products are finished, it is sent to distribution. So it's sent to whatever major network is going to use it, whether it's Netflix, Amazon, whether it's your local TV network, it doesn't matter. Distribution is that. Whether it's even social media, there's a lot of social media series out there too. So distribution also counts as marketing. So social media it is. And if you've seen the Barbie movie or even just been on social media during the Barbie movie era, there was just so much social media being posted about the movie and so much collaborations with other companies. So this is when this stage is happening. For myself, I do end up helping a lot on distribution because I help out with making some trailers for the episodes. So I make some trailers and send it to them, and then they can work on that to set it over on social media or on broadcasters and stuff like that. So yeah, those are the 6 steps. But going a little bit more into post-production. So like I said earlier, once we receive the cards from filming, my first step with that is usually my job. I put the cards into the computers and I let it back up and I let it roll on the computer until it is done. One day of filming can be around like 400 gigabytes of material. So it is very, very heavy work if you know a little bit about that. And then we're going to go into a phase called transcoding. So since it is so heavy, the material that we're filming, we have to transcode, which means creating proxies. Proxies are basically like lower quality images of what was filmed. It's because what was filmed is like 100% quality. It's really great, but at the same time, it's impossible to work on a program and to keep it running without proxies because it's just way too heavy for any program to manage. So but if you don't know how to create proxies, I really recommend that you do that with any project that you do. It's not like you don't need to do that, but it's really important. But you can find a YouTube video on how to create proxies, whether you're editing on Premiere or Resolve or anything, but it's super, super simple and it's going to make your program run a lot faster if ever you're having issues. And then afterwards, once it's transcoded, so basically when we transcode, we put a LUT, which is a kind of like a color that we're putting onto the material that is uniformizing all the shots that we're doing. So the LUT is usually created by pre-created by by color editors. So they already like pre-made this for our show, so that kind of has our style. Because when we receive the material is flat. That means that there's practically no color information on the video because it would be way too heavy to have that. So the color is only added later on into the process. Well, it is not fully flat, as in a sense, like it's not black and white, but it is kind of like gray. Like there's no depth to the image, and it doesn't look like the video of us right now. It looks, if you can look online, basically what a flat image looks like, but it's very like kind of like grayish and has like no depth of field, and pretty much like it has nothing. It's just very, very flat in a sense. But we add a LUT to that when we do the transcoding. So there's a little bit of a color so that when we do approvals with directors and producers and distributors, that they kind of have sort of an idea of what it's going to look like when it's going to be shown on TV. So once the transcoding is done, we do synchronization. Because if you don't know, most of the material doesn't arrive synchronized. So in a sense, what I mean by that is that the video and the audio is not going to be synchronized. They're not going to be at the same time because they're going to be recorded on 2 separate cards. So there's going to be the cards that are for the video and cards for the audio. So you have to make it that it's going to fit together. So usually on set, I mean, you've probably already seen this before, but there's someone that's going to clap or there's going to be a clapper thingy. So that's going to help us synchronize. So that is part of one of my jobs. And then we create dailies. So dailies, as I was saying, rushes are basically a way for the producers, for anyone that's on set that needs to have a visual of what was filmed on the previous days. So I put a picture of an example of the show that we're working on, like what the dailies look like. So that's just like one of them. We put a time code of the time that it was shot on the top right. and then you can kind of see like what it looks like. And like, for example, if you see it's episode 232, scene 14, shot 2, so that's on the left side of the image, so that they know what this scene is for, in a sense. But like there's many clips of this. This is just one clip from a few days ago. So it just shows, and it's on a application called Frame.io, which is probably the most famous viewing app for any app approvals for directors, producers, distributors, because they can put some markers on, or some comments, some live comments onto the visuals. So it's really great for that. If ever they need to put some comments to let us know some things, they'll do it right away, and it's going to put like a marker right at the timestamp of where it's supposed to be, whatever comment it is. So that's great. So afterwards, so the dailies are done, then there's going to be someone that's going to be called a content assistant. So that's someone else than me, not me. And that content assistant is going to do some markers and some cleanups. What I mean by that is that they're going to place a marker on the clip for whenever they start filming, or whenever there's a mistake in the lines, or whenever they stop filming, or whenever, well, not filming necessarily, but whenever they stop like their lines and they're done their take before they say cut. So if ever the line is, I don't know, let's just say they're on the phone with someone, so they're on the phone and they're talking, and then they mess up their line, so then the content assistant is going to put a marker there. So the content assistant always needs to look at the scripts, so they need to compare the scripts with whatever the actor is saying, and they're gonna make sure that like everything is being said in the right way, so that the editors are gonna have the proper material. Because if they see a marker that, for example, the actor messed up, they're not going to use that take because they know that the actor messed up on that particular time. And it's just easier for the editors to know, like, okay, this is when the shot, like that, this is when the action starts and this is when the action finishes, because usually when they're filming, they film a little bit before, they do the clap, a little bit after they say cut, so that there's a little bit of like some space in between for if ever there's like a mistake or something, which I recommend. If ever you're filming, you should always film a little bit before and a little bit after the action that is taking place, just in case you don't want to miss anything. So yeah, so that after that is done, everything is ready. Everything is classified, or everything is sorted, should I say, sorted for the editors. So sorted by episode, by scene, by shot, so that it's super clear for the editor to know what they're working on, and so that they can just pull out their script and start editing. That's how to do it. So then it's the editing phase. So the editor is going to open up all the work that has been done by the content assistant, and he's basically just, or he or she is just going to follow the script and do scene by scene everything. So it's literally a puzzle where you're just following some sort of like order, in a sense. So editing is not as like creative as some might think it is, because it is a lot about just following sort of like a recipe, in a sense. But you do have some creativeness, in a sense, of like, you decide which shot is being put at that time that was filmed like that. So you have a little bit of like creative freedom in that sense. But you don't necessarily have creative freedom in like, oh, let's place this scene over here and over there, and like move things around, in a sense. Most of the time, if you're doing like a produced show or produced movie, you're not going to have that creative freedom as much as if you're doing like kind of like your own project. Or if you're doing a documentary, you definitely have that freedom, that's for sure. That's why a lot of editors prefer being documentary editors, because you have that freedom of placing things wherever you want, and that's really great. You don't really have a script, and you just kind of, you can have that freedom. But when it comes to fiction, it's a recipe. You got to follow the recipe. If you don't, your producers, your directors, the screenwriters will not be happy, and you're gonna have to redo some stuff. So you have to know that as an editor, you need to please your clients. It's not about you. It's about making the show what it's supposed to be, and making it the vision of the director, the producer, and the distributors. That's super important. So with that said, then there's going to be a little bit of back and forth with the directors. So most of the time, the directors are going to come in person and sit with you, and you're going to be in an editing suite, and you're just going to talk with them, watch the whole episode, and change some things depending on what the director wants. Once that it's done, it's going to go to me. I'm going to export it, and I'm going to send it to the producers. Then the producers are going to watch it on Frame.io, like the application that I was talking about, and they're going to watch it and they're going to comment on it, and then we're going to place those comments on the episodes that the editor can go correct those, and then we're going to, once it's corrected, we send it to the distributors. The distributors put comments, and it goes back and forth. Sometimes it can be really easy with just a 3-step kind of thing, but sometimes it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and that can be very, very frustrating. But you just gotta know that one of the editors that we work with, she takes the comments like really harshly and really personally, and it's really hard on her to work on this show because the comments can be very, very harsh, such as like, oh, I can't even think of anything but it's just like she puts so much of her heart and her soul into the editing that is done that it sometimes can be super heartbreaking when you get so many negative comments on your work. And she has like what, 20-30 years of experience, so it's not because you're a professional that's been in the industry forever that you're perfect, in a sense. Like there's always room to grow, which can be good can be really good at times. So once the episode is approved, or once the movie is approved, it's going to be PIX locked, which means that there is no longer any modifications that can be done on the episode. So, which is not true, because oftentimes distributors decide to change their mind, or directors or producers are like, oh, finally, I don't really like this. And that can be very frustrating, because once it is PIX locked, it's very hard to do some modifications afterwards. So everything that was done before the PIX lock is the offline process, which means that it's when you're using the proxies. Everything after PIX lock is when you're using the actual good, high quality material. So that is when you're only using from that time code to that time code, like what the editor selected, you're putting into the correct scene that he put in the highest quality possible. So that's going to be another sequence. That's when we're entering the online the online process of editing, which is that's when other things are being done, like the color correcting is going to be done in this process. So once you have your sequence and it's all your highest quality material that is on that sequence, that's when the color correcting can be done. But if you decide to change some stuff in the content, then the color correcting won't be right anymore, because it won't apply to those kinds of places. And then the sound mixing is also being done. So part of my job is to do the exports for the sound mixing. So whatever the editor chose and the music that he chose, and the sound effects and the dialogue, I'm going to be sending those in separate files. And there's multiple different ways of doing this, but you need to like send a lot of different files to your sound mixer so that he can make the stereo sound, so that it's all mixed well together, and that we don't hear the cuts in between whatever the characters are saying, or when the music is just going fluidly from one scene to the other. So that is their job. Whatever the editors are making in the offline process, it is like it's only for approval, in a sense. So it's not the final music or the final sound effects or the final, like, it is the final dialogue, but it's not the final like sounds that are going to be in the actual show. So that's going to be the sound mixers that are going to take care of that. But yeah, if you do change in the content and the sound mixers and the color correctors have finished, then it does make it very difficult to go back into the process of editing the content, because once the sound mixing is done, it's like a block, there's no like moving around the sound. Like, it's just one big timeline of just that one piece of sound. So it can be very challenging to go back and forth once that was done. So yeah, well, if there is editing to go back into, then there's going to be a lot of like going back and forth with the sound mixers and going back to the offline process, and it can be very tedious at times. So it is not recommended. It's just way easier if you're just going straight into, once it is Pixlok, it is Pixlok, and you cannot change anything. And you do the sound mixing, the color correcting, and everything is good. And then we do packaging and VFX. So if ever there's oftentimes in our show, we have to like blur things, blur names of companies in the background, or put a stencil or something on the, like example, logos of a car that's going by or things like that. Those are like our lawyers, and the lawyers that work at our production company look at those things, and they make sure that everything is legal and okay to put on the show, so that there's no like advertisement that we don't necessarily want to do or that is done by accident. And so that is always being verified by our lawyers. And then there's packaging. Packaging is basically doing, like, if ever, for example, you're doing a documentary and there's like the name of someone that's popping up at the bottom of the screen, that's the job of the packager. And it's the person that is doing the credits at the end. It's the person that makes sure that all the names are going to be there in the proper place. They usually do this on like Photoshop and export it and put it into whatever editing program you do. You put it in, and they export it like, I don't know, like a PNG or a JPEG, and they put it into the final master file. And then afterwards, once all the packaging, the VFX, and all those other steps have been done, it is the master exports. So I do those. You have to export in the highest quality possible that you're going to need for the broadcasters. And then it's going to go through quality control or QC. So that means it's someone that's going to watch the episode in fully, and that's going to watch all the specs, make sure that it's the right sizes, the right color, the right length of time that it's supposed to be, that the opening credits are this length, and that the end credits are this length. Like, all these things are very calculated and super important, especially when it's a show or a film that is going to be broadcasted. Everything is like calculated. And then there's delivery. So it's like putting it through, some people do it through like WeTransfer. It's just like to deliver the episode or whatever. But we have like other programs other ways of doing it with our distributors, of sending our episode or the movie straight to the broadcaster. And beforehand, it would be actually doing like a full tape and then sending it by mail or by person. So that's funny. And then afterwards, it's going to be the whole marketing and distribution elements. So it's going to be like doing some trailers and advertisements for whatever it is. So sometimes I have to get out some screen grabs, for example, which are just like some screen captures of like scenes of the episode, so that they can use it for, like when you watch TV and you just see like a little icon of whatever episode it is or whatever you're going to watch. Well, those icons, you need a picture of those. Like, it's not just a random picture from the episode. They want like a good picture that is going to represent what the episode is about without necessarily spoiling anything. So someone has to export those kinds of that material. So that is also one of my jobs. So yeah, there's that. Sorry, that was really long. So the other responsibilities that you can do as an assistant editor is to do some project management. So you're going to manage like the music, the sound effects, the establishing shots, and you're just going to make it readily available for the editors. And another thing is to respond to any editor demands. So if there is not, example, a music that, what was the thing? On the other day, one of the editors asked me, I want like the sound of like the Jack in the Box doing like to do to do to do to do to do to do to do. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna find that. So I go online and I find that sound for him, and I import it and make sure that he has it available for him. So that's an example of that. And then I do all the exports for the episodes or the film, or all the approvals. Basically, I'm going to be the one that does the export, so that it's always the same thing. No matter who is the editor, it's always going to be exported the same way, and that, so that the distributors or the whoever's going to watch it is always going to have like the same uniform way of seeing it. And then there's other like editing opportunities. So for example, in every episode, at the end of the episode, there's like a little bit of a trailer for the next episode. Well, they gave me the opportunity to edit all of those trailers for the following episode. That's really good because they can see my editing skills right from then on, and I also get better as it goes at making all those little trailers or snippets of what's going to happen next. And with that, I actually got the opportunity to do the full-on big trailer for the second part of the season. So when you see like a big movie trailer, well, basically that's what I did, and it's actually in the online process at the moment. So it was approved and it went very, very well. So that's very exciting to be growing so quickly, because usually they don't give like doing a trailer part of like my part of being like an assistant editor. Like that's something that they would give to an experienced editor most of the time, but they decided to give me a chance, which is really nice, really good, especially since I don't have that much experience in a sense. And then I also had the opportunity to pre-edit some scenes for editors. So, for example, one of the editors that we worked with, she was very busy during one week, and she asked me like, "Hey, do you want to help me out this week? And you just want to like pre-edit some scenes, and then um, I'm gonna work on them later on for it to be like the way that I want them." So basically, what she means by pre-edit is basically like just do like a first cut in a sense of that particular scene, so that she can just put it on the episode and put it on the like timeline of the episode, and she can decide if she likes it or not and what she would want to change. But it's a really great exercise and a great opportunity to like know to see how fiction works. Yeah. This is the kind of setup that you would get. I took these pictures today at work. So the picture on the left is my setup in the main online editing room that we use. So this is like an expert. I was putting like the slate of an export that I did for a final episode that is going to be shown in a few months. So yeah, so just this is what it looks like. So usually there's like two screens, there's one monitor, and I like to have like a Mac next to me, or like a little laptop or something, just to like look at what are my tasks, and I can manage it on the side like that. Um, there's like a editing keyboard that's right there with a bunch of shortcuts, and right behind it there's a color wheel, a Resolve Black Magic thing, which I've never used, which is basically for color correctors to use, and they know how that works. I don't know how that works, but since it is an online editing room, that is one of the tools that is there. But yeah, this is just one of our editing suites. We have like at the place that I work at, we have like about, I don't know, 30 editing suites. So they all kind of look like this. And on the picture on the right, that's just a picture of like what it looks like to like synchronize basically. So it's when you have the clapper thingy. That's basically when you synchronize the sound and the image. You look at that kind of thing, and that's when you know what scene it is, what the shot is, and what it looks like. So you can look at that, and it's really fun to do. I love doing synchronization actually. Like you would think it's super long and boring, but I think it's really satisfying for some reason to do some synchronization. But it's not for everyone. It can be pretty tedious. So here are a few post-production softwares that are used in the professional world. I would say I forgot to change the name of the at the bottom, whatever. Forgot to change the name of the programs at the bottom, whatever. But anyway, so those are the main programs. There's Final Cut Pro, Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, and Avid Media Composer. So first going with this is Final Cut Pro. I don't really use Final Cut Pro, and I have it on this computer, but I've never used it, or barely ever used it. But it's a $400 program that you get when you buy a Mac, or that you can get if you buy any Mac products. So this is kind of what it looks like. You pretty much every editing program looks kind of similar, and they have a lot of like similar functions in the way that they work. So usually on the right top side, you're going to have like what it's going to look like the view of what your episode or whatever you're making is going to look like. On the left side, with left top side, you're gonna have like all your clips, like your source clips of what you're working on. And at the bottom, you're gonna have your timeline. So that's where you're gonna place your clips one after the other to be able to make a sequence. So that's what it looks like. Here is what the Premiere Pro or the Adobe Suite looks like. So here you're going to have a little bit more on this one. So it's a little bit more complex in a sense, where you're going to have on the right side, like I was like in Final Cut, you're going to have the like view of what you've created. On the left top side, you're going to have the view of your source material, so what your source looks like. At the bottom left, you're going to have like the actual clips of the source or whatever you're putting your effects, your music. So it's a little bit more like in a list form. And on the right bottom side, you're going to have your timeline. I talk about these because I think it's really important to familiarize with every of these programs before you start your career. Like at least use them once, or at least watch a video of one of them. But it's super important. Oh yeah, and Premiere Pro is actually about like, I think it's around $35 for students per month, but it is worth it to maybe take like a free trial for like a month, or I think it's like for 1 month you have a free trial or something like that. But it is worth it to at least give it a try and see how it's like. I have learned mainly on Premiere Pro. I would say that it's the one that I know the most, but it's not the one that I currently work with. But it is what a lot of shows are working on, especially specifically documentaries. A lot of them are on there, or reality TV shows. There are a lot on Premiere Pro, so good to think about. DaVinci Resolve. This is more one of the newer programs in a sense, and it is taking form and is very popular, especially at the moment. It is the one that is being used because it's great for color. So once we go into the online process, almost every project goes in DaVinci Resolve. Like I would say like 80% of the industry is on DaVinci Resolve for their online parts of the project. It is not super popular for editing because everyone else is so used to editing on the other programs that they're not really using DaVinci for editing. But I think it's getting more and more popular, so it is super important to get started on that, especially since DaVinci Resolve is free. So you should just download it from online. It's free. If you want the pro version, it is I think it's $400 or something like that. But you pretty much have everything you need for the free version. The bot version is much more if you want to do like complex projects, and if you're working at a production company, they're going to have all of that set up for you. So you're not going to have to worry about that. But even at our production company, I think we only have like 5 or 6 of our editing rooms that have the pro version, and the rest only have the free version on it. So it's really like do as you will, but it's super important to know Resolve, I would say, because especially for packaging, for anything like that, you need to know how it works. It's actually really great. Personally, it is my favorite program. So kind of similar to Premiere Pro in a sense, like you're going to have the view of like your what you're making, the view of your source. On the left side you have all your source clips, and on the bottom you're going to have like your transitions, like video transitions, some effects, and all that is going to be in a different folder than your source clips. Versus Premiere, it's not necessarily it's going to be more like all together. On the right side, you're going to have on the top right side, for example, like if ever you're making a modification to the sizing, then that's going to be there. Or if you're doing like some position changing, some cropping, all that stuff is going to be on that side. And at the bottom right side, it's going to be your sound mixing. So that, well, not necessarily mixing, but you're going to see your sound levels and all that. And at the bottom, it's super important. So you have different like folders in a sense. You're gonna have like your media folder, your cut folder, your edit folder, fusion, color, the one that's for music, and the deliver. The deliver is for exports basically. Color is going to be the one that all the color correctors are going to be working profusely a lot on. They're going to be working a lot on that one. And the edit is basically like the one that's on any editing program that you're going to be used to. The cut is much more for like editing, but personally, I really hate the cut function in DaVinci. I think working in edit is much more, it's much more efficient. So, but it really depends. And media is much more about like managing your media and like putting some folders and stuff like that. And it's easy, it's like an easier way to manage your media. And then there's Avid Media Composer. So this one is much more for the television scene. This is the one that we work on the most at work. It is very popular for any like fictional TV shows. It's a little bit more outdated in a sense. Like it's one of the like major professional softwares that you're going to use, and it's definitely harder to it's harder to use because it's so outdated in a sense. They are still doing updates and stuff like that, but it is a very different way of making things. Like these were made to work with tapes at the time, and now everything is digital. It's made digitally, but like it's just people are so used to using Avid Media Composer that I don't think it's going to leave the scene. But at the same time, like Resolve is taking up so much space at the moment. I'm not sure for the actual cost of Avid Media Composer, but I'm sure you can look that up online. But I think it is one of the more expensive ones. But then again, you have the similar setup again. You have on the right side the view of what you're doing. The left monitor is what is about your source clip. And then on the left side fully, that's where you're going to have your bins. So the Avid works in a different way where they have like bins of everything, which is where you're going to have your source clips, your timelines, like everything is going to be in different bins. And it's kind of hard to explain it just quickly like that, but bins are, it's kind of like folders, but it's managed in a different way. And on the left side, it's more like your left bottom side, it's more like your settings and what you're working on. I mean, there's different like folders to that, but I think the image cut off. And yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much the major editing programs and how they look. All the editing programs have some toolbars. So the first one at the top is the DaVinci Resolve toolbar, where each do their thing. I guess the major important one to talk about is, I guess, the razor one, which is how you're going to do your cuts. The razor usually comes into every editing program in some shape or form. The image at the bottom, there is the fourth icon is also a razor that is for Premiere Pro. So that's just basically how you're going to do your cuts from place to place. And I think that's like probably the most important tool for you to work on at the beginning. And this is for Avid Media Composer. There's like there's like an arrow where the number 3 is pointing at, which is called Add Edit. So this is how you're going to do any cuts in Avid Media Composer. So it's not like a razor. It's like you're going to have to like select the tracks where you want to be cutting in a sense, and then it's going to create an add edit in a sense, which is where it's going to cut. That's how it's a different way of working. But yeah, once you get used to Avid, it's kind of hard to do anything else, because like Avid is it's like its own thing. And like I would say DaVinci is like a mix of Avid and Premiere. It's like a in between, and then Final Cut Pro is kind of like an easier version of those things. Like it's a little bit more like a user friendly, I would say. So yeah, so a little bit about basics of editing. So I think the most important thing to know about editing is continuity. And that's going to be important not just in fiction, where you're going to need continuity to know how the story is working, but continuity is super important in documentaries as well. If your subject is talking about horses, you're going to want to have a visual of horses, because it's going to make you think about whatever the person is saying. That's super important to use. So it's not necessarily, continuity isn't necessarily just about like following the action of one person. It's about like following the story in a like narrative way, in a sense, in a way that makes sense from one visual to the next. So the official definition of continuity editing is a system of culling used to maintain continuous and clear narrative action by following a set of rules. So I put the rules on the left side. The benefits of it is to have a narrative structure, a shot of sequence that flows seamlessly into each other. It's reestablishing a shot. So if you're having different scenes, it's reestablishing like where you're going to be in the next scene. And it just makes it so much easier to watch anything that you're watching. If you're watching a montage style movie, it's going to be really hard to understand, and you're not going to know all the time what's going to happen. But I guess like I guess I mean in anything, even in body horror movies, you're not just going to have like montages. You're gonna need to have continuity to understand the narrative structure in a sense. But there has been some experimenting on some movies that have only done the montage structure. So do with that information what you will. But yeah, the rules here on the left side, they're rules not just because like you have to follow them, but they're like you can write these rules, they're possible. But if you're starting out, you need to follow those rules. It's super, super important because that's how you're gonna make like a narrative that's gonna look strong, it's gonna look interesting, that's gonna I mean, these are just super important. So there's the establishing shot, which is basically like your visual of where you're going to be. So if your action is taking place in a police station, well, it would be really nice to have an establishing shot of that police station to know to let your viewers know, oh, this is where the action is taking place. Because if you're just starting right off your scene with like in the police station and they're having a conversation, it can be disorienting for the viewer of like, oh, where are we now? Like, what's happening? That's super important to have that like visual cue. And once you all of these rules, like once you start noticing them, you're going to see them in every film or TV content that you're going to watch. Like it's everywhere. Then there's the shot reverse shot, which is the obvious like talking head in the sense where you're going to see me, then you're going to see the next person talking. And I'm going to have more visual examples of this later on. Then there's the 180 rule. I'm going to show them later on. But what's super important that one of my editors always say that it's super important to start your scene further and then you push in with the emotions. So it's never great to start off with like having, I don't know, like your subject super, super close, like this, and then it's great. Like you have to finish your scene like that, like go in the middle of your scene like that, and then you go push back out. In a sense, that's the best way to do it in a sense. Because when you start further away and then you push in whenever there's more emotions, it just makes it more like the viewer is going to be much more enthralled and much more interested in what they're going to be consuming. It's like going into a conversation, it's going into the action, and it just makes it so much more captivating. So that's also another rule that's not necessarily in there, but it's when you start your scene, you're further, you push in, and then you push back out once you finish your scene, if you can do that. Okay, next slide. So the examples of all the rules. So on the right side, on the top right side, there's going to be an establishing shot of Hogwarts. So this is what you know that you're going to be in the scene in the classroom, you're going to be in a scene on a hallway with the characters that you're expecting to see. Like you just know that if you would see a telephone booth in London, then you wouldn't expect the next shot to be in the classroom, right? So it just makes sense. It's just logic in a sense of you're seeing an establishing shot of where you're supposed to go. Then the shot reverse shot here, so it shows the reactions of both characters. So you get one shot of one person talking, and then the reaction of whatever the person is reacting to, whatever that other person said. This is super important to just keep it more entertaining whenever you're having a conversation being done. So if ever you're shooting a shot reverse shot, it's super important to have two cameras or to redo the action at least twice, so you can have those editing clips and having those shots. And with the shot reverse shot, it's super important to also think about the 30-degree rule. So that means that the minimum amount of degree that you should have from one camera to the next is 30 degrees. Why is that? Is just because it doesn't make it look like there's a jump cut. A jump cut is when you like kind of feel like there's something uncanny happening from one cut to the next. It's like, oh, it's like slightly next to the other shot that we saw, but it's like strange. It's like it seems more like strange. Like when you watch it, I don't have an example right here of like what a jump cut looks like, but I'm sure you can find a bunch of them online. But if, the 30-degree rule just makes it that it makes it more seamless when you see when you have at least the camera that's a little bit at a different angle, so that if you have two of those shots, one after the other, it seems natural. It doesn't seem like jarring from one shot to the next. So it's important to think and to have in mind whenever you are shooting or if you are editing to think about those rules so that it doesn't look jarring when you're watching it. Then there's the 180-degree rule, which is when you're having a shot reverse shot, you need to keep that same line of axis of the action. It's kind of like in theater. You really want to keep the camera on one side of the stage. You don't want to be on the other side of the stage because then you'd see the audience and that would be weird, right? But it kind of gives that same effect whenever you're filming. If you film like where the X is when it says it's wrong, it makes it look very jarring when whenever there's a cut between the shot reverse shot. So you need to keep it the way, kind of like on the same axis. And practicing that is super important. If you need to try this firsthand, like if ever you are shooting, like it's really important to like try this and try the other version where it is wrong and try it in the editing. And maybe you're going to see like, oh yeah, it's true. It doesn't really work well like that. It's trial and error that makes us better. And yeah, I definitely recommend with you experimenting with that. Then there's a match on action, which is pretty much the classic, you reaching for the door, seeing having a shot that is closer with the 30-degree rule, because if you think about it, like there is a 30-degree change between the first shot and the second shot because it makes it less jarring. So you think about that even if it's close up. So yeah, so the classic like opening the door, then the shot of the door handle, and then getting out the door, so that's something that is very classic and it happens in pretty much every movie, every TV show. This is going to happen. Cross-cutting, it's when two actions or more are happening at the same time. So this is a great example of the movie Inception, I think, that's on there. So you have the action of what's happening in their dream and you have the action of what's happening in real life and going back and forth between each scene. So this happens in much modern content where there's a buildup that's happening. You're going to have two actions or more happening at the same time, or two scenes happening at the same time in a sense. Eyeline match is when your character is looking at something and then we have a shot of what they're looking at. So if their phone is ringing, they can look over there and then there's going to be a shot of the telephone that's ringing in a sense. So that's also super important to think about whenever you're editing or whenever you're shooting, to have that extra material of that, so you can have a more captivating material. So yeah, here are a few jobs of what could be possible in the post-production world. So these are just like a few of the jobs that are possible. So it is limitless. There's so much thinking of going through. There's so much opportunities. I mean, just in one credit, there's hundreds of names for any credit scene. So like you have to think about, like, there is opportunity. Like I'm sure you're gonna find a space in whatever you want to do. So these are just a few ideas of what you could do, but I'm going to talk about a little bit of them that could be interesting for you guys. But a post-production coordinator is for someone that is going to do a 9-to-5 job. They're the person that are basically giving the task to the assistants. So they're the ones that are between for example, the producers and the assistant editors, and they're going to be the ones in between doing the communication between both of them. So if, for example, the producer is asking he finished writing his comments, well, the post-production coordinator, their responsibility is to tell the assistant editor to put the markers or put the comments onto the sequence of the editor. So it's kind of like the person that's a little bit in the middle. It's the communicator. It's the one that's trying to put everyone on track to finish the project at the right time. So if scheduling is something that's super interesting to you, if you like to be super organized and like kind of like not boss people around in a sense, but like kind of like organize people and to making things come to term at the right time, that's a really great job for you. It's a really great job for like if you're interested in communicating with people, it's really great for that. The assistant editor, I mean, I talked about it enough. It's pretty much me, and pretty much for everything that we talked about. Then there's going to be the technical supervisor, which it is someone that knows a lot about these programs that we talked about. I talk to my technical supervisor way too many times per day. That means when I have an issue with the program and I don't know how to do something, I talk to my technical supervisor like, hey, can you help me with X, Y, Z? And then at some point, I'm going to learn those kinds of things, those kinds of problems I can encounter. Then you can find the sound mixer. So like I was telling you earlier, the sound mixer is the person that is going to make the sound look seamless on the online sequence. So usually those people are out of house. So we deal with third-party clients, which and they work on that on their own, and then they send us the final file in the end, which is just like an MP4 file or a WAV file that we can put into our sequence. So that is another, I don't know as much about sound mixing, but it is another process that is super interesting to work with. And there's a bunch of different positions just in sound mixing as well. Then I can talk about an online editor, which is the person that's going to take care of like putting the color onto the sequence that the color editor is going to do. Then the color editor is also someone else. We work with third-party people to do the color editing. The VFX infographists are the people that are going to, put the name at the bottom of something. They're going to blur something. So their job is to blur something on just one specific shot. So we're going to export that shot for that person, and they're going to take care of like blurring something or taking something out. So if you're really interested in like After Effects and doing things like that, this is like a great job that is looked at and wanted at so many production companies. And it's something that you can do at an entry level. Like you can learn how to blur something at an entry level. Packaging is the person that's going to do the credits, the end credits, and that's going to put everything into the online sequence so that everything is perfect. The content assistant editor, like I was saying earlier, is the one that puts the markers about the content for the editors. So that's another job. So there's just like, these are just so many jobs that are here. And if ever there's one that you're interested in and want to know more about, I mean, I work with people that are these people. I work with a bunch of people that have these positions. So I can talk to you a little bit more about those things if ever you're interested. So I want to talk about getting a job. So it's something that's important when you want to get a job in the industry is thinking about these 4 things. So when you're applying, it's important to have a polished resume. So what I mean by that is I don't want you to put a picture of yourself on your resume. It's very unprofessional, and people won't accept your resume if there's a picture of yourself on it. I don't know why. It's just a convention about it. It's not as well seen in the industry. So just like put a polished resume where it's just writing. You don't want to make it look pretty. That's not the goal. You just want to make it look super clean and easy to read for the person that is going to interview you. So apply everywhere. There's so many opportunities on Indeed, LinkedIn, or if you're looking into working on sets, there's a bunch of guilds. So there's like, I don't know as much for Ontario, but the one in Quebec is called Actis. And it's a guild that works on like, how can I explain this? So it's a guild where you apply for a job. So example, if I want to be part of the guild as an assistant editor, I can. So as an assistant editor, I can be part of the guild, and I'm going to get jobs more like as a freelancer in a sense. So I pay a certain amount per month. I think it's about like $40, $50 a month to be part of this guild. And then I'm going to have access to like a list of jobs, of contracts where I can be a freelancer on different projects. But you can be like, guilds like this can also be good for if you're working in lighting, or if you want to be a camera assistant or a first camera person, or if you want to be a director. There's all these guilds that are meant for different for these different jobs. There's like acting guilds, there are directors guilds. There's a bunch of different ones, but like Actis is mainly for like crew and technical jobs and editing jobs. I mean, our editors are almost all Actis workers, so they're contract workers. So you can look at different guilds. I'm sure there's a bunch in Ontario as well, but usually it's more of like a provincial thing. So it's good to look into. And usually guilds, what they offer is that you pay a certain amount per month. And with that, once you accumulate a certain amount of hours in whatever you're working in, so example, if you do 200 hours in assistant editing, then you're going to have access to different courses that are going to allow you to get higher paying jobs and higher level jobs. So it's example, if I'm doing assistant editing for a certain thing, I did 200 hours of it, then I'm going to have like the availability of applying for a certain class that's going to allow me to do like better jobs, in a sense that it's going to be like a class for assistant editing, like this specific avenue of it. And then that's going to allow me to unblock and do bigger jobs and things like that. So that's a different way to grow. And it is like, it is still safe in a sense that you're still like, you're not having a recurrent salary, but you still have certain benefits that are linked with being with a guild. Like you're going to have like, so like people are going to take care of you in the sense, like there's different benefits. I mean, if you do a certain amount of money in a year, you're allowed different benefits for like medical and dental and whatever. So different guilds have different benefits though, so you keep that in mind. But it's a really good way if you're looking more for contract work. This is super interesting. So then another thing to keep in mind is seasons. So the winter time is often an off season. So a lot of people in the industry do not work in the winter time. Why? It's because there's not a lot of things that are being filmed in the winter time. Oftentimes it's just finishing off projects that were started in the fall. And then there's going to be a little bit of like a quiet moment until like April, and then when things start to roll back again. So a lot of employers are going to start hiring in March, April, because they want people to be back and rolling and ready for the summer, because the summertime is when most of the things are being filmed. So keep that in mind, that you should start applying a little bit before you're graduating or right when you are graduating, because you need to keep that in mind. And a lot of people are hiring in the March, April time. And if you're too late, there's not going to be any space for you. Like it's sad, but it's true. Like, except if you want to be maybe part of a guild, but if you want to work in a more stable place, like you definitely need to think about it as early as you can and start applying and take that time. Like I think when the time I was applying, I was doing like, my goal was to do like 5 applications a week. And it was hard sometimes because with finals and stuff, it was difficult, but that's how you get an interview. And you want to get interviews because that's how you get jobs, right? So, and once you get an interview, it's really important to know about the projects of the company that you're interviewing with. When you know what they're talking about, it makes it so much easier to like connect, and you can always reference whatever they're working on. You could say, I love that project that you did, or if you know there's an interview coming with that company, like maybe watch a movie or watch a TV show that they made, because it just makes interaction way better. And then there's salary. Never accept anything under $20 an hour, like in this industry. Like there's always something that's higher paying than $20, and like you at least need to have that $20 an hour if you're a beginner. If you have more experience, so if you've done some internships, when I say experience, I mean like work experiences. Like, yeah, doing your personal projects, it's really, really good and really important, but like companies are going to look more into work experiences. Then you can start asking for $23 to $25 an hour. But those are what you should expect for salaries around that time. But I know that in contract work, sometimes it can be a little bit like lower, like $18 to $19 an hour. So keep that in mind. But like, it really depends on like what you are okay with. But I wouldn't recommend you going under $20 an hour if you're a beginner, and because like you still did a degree and you still know certain things, but like and you're gonna learn. But I feel like in the climate that we are in financially, it's super important to take a stand for yourself. Like there's going to be other jobs. Like there's going to be other people. There's going to be other people that are going to want to work with you. So, have that certain amount of pride in a sense, but don't ask don't ask for like $30 an hour if you have zero experience. You know what I mean? Like you gotta be like working with that. So here are some other tips that I want to talk about once you are working in a company, or even if you're working on a set, but this goes on to any field. Like if you're working in theater, if you're working in academics, I don't care what you're working on. This is super, super, super important if ever you want to grow and become like better in whatever you want to work in. The first thing is always say hello to the people that you're working with. Whenever I arrive at work, I do the rounds of the whole office, of like the post-production office, and I say like hi to everyone, like how's it going? How was your weekend? Be friendly with people. If you're working from home, take the time to write to your team, to attend whatever like group meetings that you have and communicate with people. Share personal stories. People are interested to want to get to know you. You're going to be with these people for at least 40 hours a week. It's good to communicate, but at the same time, don't spend all your time doing that. But it is super important to take some of your time into doing that, even though even if you're super busy. That's how people remember you. That's how people are going to recommend you for other jobs in the future. Another thing is avoid gossip, especially if you're working in an office or in person. It's really easy to get into doing gossip, but it always comes to bite you in the ass. Like people are always listening and in a sense, and so be careful what you're saying. It's really important. It can lead to you being fired in a sense, because if you end up gossiping, you say the wrong thing to the wrong person. You have to be careful. You just have to try to stay positive and always be like the good person around in a sense. Always be curious and approachable. So if you don't know how to do something, look it up, ask people. People want to help you. No one is annoyed at helping you. People like helping. They like to be like, they like it. It's a quality. People enjoy it. Be approachable. Be like, if someone needs help from you, don't be like, I'm doing this. Like, no, be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll come help you. I don't have anything else to do than help you. Like that is be like really happy and eager to be helpful and to be interested in whatever other people want to say or whatever other people are doing. Always make the other person feel like they're right. Don't always say like, no, you're wrong. No, you don't know how to do this. Like, no, make them feel like, oh, well, I'm gonna help you, or this is how you do that. Just bring it in a positive way. Take the criticism. If you're not doing something right, just be like, try not to take it personally, even though you know you're right. Like so many times I know I'm right. I know that I didn't do the mistake, but I'm the one that gets blamed for it. And I'm like, you know what? Take it. Take it. It doesn't matter. Who cares who did the mistake? In the end of the day, it's just like, okay, correct it. On to the next thing. No need to make a big deal out of it. If it's about correcting like something that you edited, it's just like, you know what? Take the criticism, even if you think that the producer or the director is wrong in their decision. You're like, it's their show. They're paying for it. They're the ones that are the clients. So, and you have to make them happy. Another thing is always ask questions. Like if you need help, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. It's so important. And also it makes people feel like you're interested and you want to know about them. You want to know about their work. You want to get better and be like them. So that's really important. Let people know your goals and interests. So right from the start from working where I work at right now, I was saying like, I really want to be an editor. I really want to be one of those people. So, I sometimes joke whenever they're looking for some editor to do like a bigger job. I'm like, hi, you can take me. But like, obviously they're not going to take me because I don't have experience. But you know what? Like when they hear it over and over again that I'm interested and I want to do editing, that's why they gave me the job to do the trailer for the second part of the season of the show that I'm working on, which is a huge opportunity. And like usually they would take someone that at least have like 5 years of experience to do something like this. So, and you know what? They ended up liking it. Like it went really well through the director, the producer, and the distributors. Like it went super well. Like we had the same vision, and it just like it clicked. So you never know, maybe that's going to lead to other opportunities in the future. But it's super important to let people know, like, what are your goals, what are your interests, like, why are you here, like, what are your, like, what do you want to do in a sense. That's super important. Also, it's okay to do mistakes. Just don't like worry about it, like, don't just correct it, move on, correct it, send it over, move on. There's no point in dwelling on it and feeling bad and crying about it at night. Like, there's no point. It's just going to make you feel better and perform less well in the future. So think about that. And also, YouTube has all the answers. Especially if you're working in editing, YouTube has all the answers. If you don't know how to do something, look on YouTube first, then ask questions. Then ask questions to someone that's you're working with. But YouTube is so good. That's how I learned most of the things I learned, and it's a really great resource. So if ever, you definitely should look more into it, into doing tutorials and learning how the programs work, the programs that we talked about. It's super important. But yeah, have any of you ever worked on any of the programs that I talked about? I don't know if, like, any of you have, but either way, I mean, I think it's good. But thanks for listening. That was it. Thanks for having me blab for all this time. But if any of you have some questions.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I think for like the sake of the video recording, I can end it here and we can go into questions. But yeah, for like anybody who's watching through the video, all of like Steph's like YouTube channels or anything you can reach her out to, we can put in the description. And also any comments that you have, you can place it there. But yeah, thank you so much.